my aim of this conversation is to hopefully make you feel like it's not all doom and gloom, because I think a lot of what's happened in 2020 is quite doomy and gloomy, especially if you're in the music industry. So I think there's definitely some sort of positives we can take, and there are some things that we can do to make sure we are starting 2021 and beyond ready to, combat whatever's coming our way. And I think it's completely normal, and I've said this to a lot of artists over the last 9 months, it's completely normal if you have had a down period this year, and don't sort of beat yourself up if you've felt uncreative or felt like you haven't been motivated, because we've obviously are going through a time that's kind of unprecedented, certainly in the last 100 years. Well, I mean, I think the war was probably quite a little bit of a effort to get through, but I think like beyond that, this is certainly a very different time. So I don't necessarily like this phrase, a new normal, because I think things are constantly evolving, but I think there is truth in the fact that things probably will never be the same again in the music industry as we know them. I don't think they'll remain what we're seeing on the screen on this slide here, but I think there will be long-lasting effects that we have to negotiate as artists and as people that work with artists. So why am I here talking to you, and why should you care about anything I have to say? You don't, but I have worked with many artists early on in their careers. I started a music platform called Secret Sessions when I was in my 20s, so 10 years ago when I was in my early 20s, and I've worked with anyone from Ed Sheeran to Ben Howard to Mahalia, and lots of artists very early in their careers. So I think what I have seen is the same problems re-emerging over and over again for artists. So I think where I can talk to you is probably understanding some of the things that you're feeling, particularly in 2020, because I've had a lot of contact with musicians. I hope that I can make you feel a little bit more at ease if you do have any worries, by letting you know that these probably are normal feelings, and maybe give you some tips on ways that you can spend your time at the moment. And that is just a picture of me and my dog to let you know where I've spent most of the 9 months in my house with my dog. Okay, so before we start, I think it's really important to let any young musician know that you have lots and lots of time ahead of you. I think it's very easy to get sort of stressed out and overwhelmed by what's happening. You might be thinking right now, oh my God, I'm never going to play a live show again. But if you don't play, unless any of you are much older than you look, if you don't play a live show for the next year, you're still going to be okay and have plenty of time to build your career. So these are two artists that I worked with early on in their careers. One, I'm sure you'll recognize at the top, whether you like him or not. He's done very well for himself. And this was him 10 years ago on a balcony in East London. And I was behind the camera, just out of shot. And this is Mahalia below, who yesterday won 2 Mobos at the Mobo Awards. And this was her again 10 years ago when I filmed her. And what I wanted you to, what this is trying to illustrate, is that overnight success generally takes about 10 years to happen. And I think people often don't take that into account, and people will think, oh my God, where did this person come from? They came out of nowhere. But these, Ed Sheeran has played every venue in the UK twice, and Mahalia is here doing a little session in the East End pub when she was 14 years old with her parents there, and now she's winning a Mobo. But I think what is important to say here is that I think success comes from the sum of lots of little things I think people think that success is just one big thing that suddenly happens, but actually it's the sum of many, many small things. And those small things can be doing a Zoom call with someone like me. Those small things can be playing a really small venue where only 2 people turn up. Those small things can be doing a session with your friend who's a videographer. You never know which one of those things are going to lead to something else. And I think it's important to not always just be chasing those big moments, because actually the smaller moments, when they add up, can lead to some of those big moments. And feel free, by the way, to stop me and ask any questions along the way if you want to. Otherwise, I'll just babble on and we can do them at the end. So let's start with the bad news. The UK music industry is set to lose £1 billion this year. And that's an industry that does very well for itself in relation to the world stage. I think we make about 4 billion a year. So a large proportion of that will be lost this year. And from an artist point of view, because of the way the industry is made up right now and the way that an artist's income is distributed, whether it's fair or not, a lot of it comes from live income. And 85% of an artist's live income has gone. The 15% that hasn't gone was probably just gigs they did in January last year. So live shows might never return to what they were. And touring in particular, travel might have changed forever. We don't know. I think there will be a knock-on effect for forever, or not necessarily a knock-on effect. I think things will change. So I'm just going to play you this reel. So Secret Sessions began as a YouTube channel, and over the years it built into a live event. And the live event was all about connection and about being in the room together and about giving artists a stage and bringing audiences and artists together to provide a platform. And the reason I want to show you this video is to make you understand that I get it. Like, I get how upsetting it is that we're not having live shows, and I don't want you to see me as someone that's just coming along and saying, oh God, how terrible it must be for artists. Like, I understand. This is something that I built up over many years that right now can't happen. So I hope you'll be able to hear it. Could you hear that? No, you couldn't hear it.
Couldn't hear the music, no.
I'm sorry about that. That must have been such a boring 2 minutes. I'll send you the link. But yeah, so like I say, let me just try and get out of that. Yeah, like I say, I am feeling it as much as artists are, the not having the stage. So I don't want you to think that I'm just here saying, oh no, isn't it terrible? You've lost £1 billion. What are we going to do? Because, you know, I'm part of the effect of it. But the good news is there is a huge opportunity right now to build an audience. And you might have already started building an audience. So you might not be generating any revenue right now from your music. And if that's true, that means that you are potentially in an even better position, because you don't have anything to lose right now by you know, shifting focus and doing things in a new way. The other good news is that you are a digital first generation. So it's likely that the things that you need to be doing right now are things that you know how to do anyway. I think some artists that are going to find it a little bit harder to adapt are people that are very set in their ways, using the industry model that right now is broken. And the thing that I find really exciting right now is that it doesn't matter where you're from. The internet right now is the stage, and it's the same for everybody. So I know that when I've done some conversations in the past, people have, you know, as much as we love Thanet and as much as we love to be here, I know that some artists have felt kind of stifled by not being in London, or not being able to get to the bigger venues to play or to see other artists. But I guess a positive way you can look at it is that, you know, everything now is democratized and everybody has the same stage, which is the internet. And this is a quote that I like from Stephen Hawking, which is, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. So whichever way you look at it, we have seen change right now. And for you guys to come out of it successfully, you're going to need to adapt to what that is. So I think the big opportunity right now for artists is to focus 100% or 80% of their marketing time on social media. So I know that you will want to spend some of your time making music, which of course is what you do as musicians. But I think if there's anywhere else you can spend a large proportion of your time, it should be growing your audience on social media. And what I mean by growing your audience is finding people that will become engaged. And by engaged, that means people that will come to your shows, people that will buy your merchandise, people that will stream your songs. They're not just followers. And I think where we have sometimes gone wrong on the internet is that we chase followers. Everybody wants 1 million followers or 1 million subscribers, but what sometimes we fail to remember is that what we really need is engagement, because ultimately if those people aren't going to engage with what you do, you're not going to make money from them. And I think most artists want is to be able to make a living from their career. So if your followers are not engaged, they're simply mannequins and they don't mean anything. So how do we get people engaged? So what I believe that you should be striving for first is a small but dedicated fan base. So a small amount of people that will do anything you ask within reason. So you are looking for, so let's start with 10. Find 10 people that love what you do. I heard an artist say the other day that his first ambition was to make one person, he wanted to be one person's favorite song. And that was his first ambition, was to be one person's favorite song. So like I say, we always think about the millions. How can I get 1 million of this and 1 million that? But if you could get 1,000 people to really love what you do, and if you could get 1,000 people to spend £100 on you a year, so coming to your gigs, watching your streams, buying your merch, 1,000 people that love you enough to spend £100, you're then making £100,000 salary, which is not bad for a musician. And I think we don't really think of it like that, because when it comes to the internet, we're so used to chasing these massive numbers. But at the end of every screen is a person. And if you can make that person love you and love you enough to spend money with you, then that's the kind of fan base you want to be growing online. So when it comes to social media and growing a fan base, I think the most important thing to remember is that consistency is key. And it's very easy to get very disheartened on social media. I think when you put up a post and nothing happens and you don't get as many likes as you wanted to, or your parents and your best friend has liked, and you think, God, where are all these fans? I think a really good thing to know is that if we're talking about Instagram, and it's the same on Facebook, the algorithm will dictate that actually a very small amount of people probably see that post. So it's not that people aren't liking what you're doing, it's that they're not actually seeing it. And the way that you can make that algorithm work in your favor is by having a very regular schedule to your posts. So normally that would mean every day, once. So what can you do right now? So I always want, when I speak to talent, I want them to be able to walk away from the chat and do something immediately. So if we're talking about social media, one of the most important things that you can do is identify who your ideal fan is. So that's someone that you are talking to with your music and that you are talking to with your communication. So, for example, if you wanted to attract this group of guys on your left, who are obviously rockers and moshers, if you wanted to attract them, you wouldn't post the same stuff as if you wanted to attract that group of girls on the right. They're a completely different fan base. And if you can identify who your fan base are, then every time you post something on social media, you make sure you're talking to that person. So a really good exercise to do, like after we've finished this call, sit down with a pen and paper, write all about your ideal fan. Give her or him a name, give them an age, write about what they like doing, where do they live, how old they are. Stick that on your wall, and then every time you post, that is who you're posting for. And if you can attract one of those fans, it means you can attract 2, and then it means you can attract 5, 10, 100, 1,000. And then you've got your 1,000 fans. So 3 things that you can do right now after this call to start getting your engagement rolling on Instagram or Facebook. So this is a challenge for you. First thing you're going to do is direct message 5 artists that you want to collaborate with or that you admire. Now, this is something that I think makes people feel quite uncomfortable, and you're like, oh God, no, I don't want to do that. But just taking that small bit of action can sometimes lead to, it could lead to a partnership, or it could lead to a nice conversation. B, it could lead to them not messaging back and you being slightly embarrassed. But even just the action of direct messaging is going to help your algorithm, and Instagram's going to like you a little bit more for doing that. The next thing we're going to do is go to the profiles of the last 5 fans that followed you and leave a comment on their page. So I think that's really important, to have a kind of direct back and forth communication with fans. I think a lot of the time people put like the artist on the pedestal and that they don't have to sort of do anything to remain engaged with the fans. But I think the really great thing about the internet is that it's allowed that 2-way conversation between artists and their fans. So if you know, people will always say to me, how do I get 5 new followers? And I'm like, go and leave 10 comments on people's socials, so that is a 2-way conversation happening. And then the last thing you're going to do is head to the hashtags and follow 10 hashtags that your ideal fan would follow. So say your ideal fan was a 15-year-old boy who liked rock music, you're going to go and follow 5 hashtags that he might follow, so that you're hanging out in the same places as your fans, and that then you're going to start to engage with similar people that might like your music.